So today, let us learn about spirulina and how it can help strengthen and balance our immunity. So last week, we talked about how spirulina can help us to balance our nutritional intake. Having a balanced nutritional intake is also closely related to our immunity. Therefore, today's topic will be somewhat connected to last week's. But for today, we'll be mainly focusing on whether if ELKEN Spirulina can help us strengthen and balance our immunity and how these are achieved. Before we begin, I want to ask everyone. So when COVID first started, everyone was probably more familiar with our immune system. But after some time, do you still remember how your body's immune system works? All right, let us do a recap. The immunity response in our body is of our immune system. And there are two different types. One is innate immunity. The second is adaptive immunity or acquired immunity. And through these two kinds of immunity, they're able to protect our body. The main difference is that innate immunity is an ability you have right after you are born. Right when you're born. Of course, as children are not well developed and mature enough, so their immunity isn't as good as adults. As for adaptive immunity, it is nurtured and cultivated through the environment surroundings we're exposed to as we are growing up. And as for an innate immunity has a rapid response. For example, if you come into contact with some bacteria, your body will respond to it immediately. But as for adaptive immunity, it takes time. And it might take days or even weeks before it can completely fight against certain germs or bacteria. Innate immunity acts like the first defense, the first and second one. So the first defense is our skin, our tears, our saliva, some liquids secreted from the nose, and wax in our ears. So all these are our first line of defense. And if it breaks through it, we will have the second line of defense. And this innate immunity has different immune cells. So if you can look at the picture on the left, there are two that we want everyone to remember. The first one is macrophage, and the second one is NK cell, natural killer cell. So just remember these two first as they are considered innate immunity, which means that when these cells detect some abnormalities, they would eat up the foreign substance they encounter and break them down or ruin the cell's outer layer to protect this. With that, our body wouldn't have any infection. As for adaptive immunity, when our innate immunity is unable to take everything in control, and the foreign substances are starting to bring harm to your body, during this time, your adaptive immune cells have T cells and B cells. And when that happens, the cells will receive the message and together they will carry out immune response. Therefore, this is why it has slow immune response, as it takes a few days. But once it recognizes the bacteria, the pathogen, or virus, it will remember it forever as they have memories. And once they know how to handle it, they will form antibodies to fight these pathogens. If you ever encounter the same bacteria again, they will have a quicker response to it as they won't forget. So this is the main difference between innate and adaptive immunity. We need both of them as they're equally important, especially for our first and second defense. If we didn't let this bacteria get through, then we wouldn't have much symptoms of being ill. After taking note of these, let us move on. In the past, we always mention that malnutrition will lead to a decline in immunity. Because for the ones we mentioned earlier, whether if it's innate immunity or adaptive immunity, the cells in there needs nutrients. If we have insufficient nutrients, it would affect our metabolism, cell functions, and the health of cells. While we are at malnutrition, can we tell just by looking at a person's appearance? Not necessarily. For instance, look at the picture. There's a skinny person and a chubby person. The chubby person might also be malnourished because the food they eat is not well balanced, but has a lot of calories. And hence why they would gain weight and etc. As for kids, last episode we talked about how they might be picky, right? And as for adults, their lifestyle habits, or maybe they only think about eating good food, so they overlook having a balanced nutritional intake. As for elderlies, it is usually because they have poor appetite, poor digestion, poor absorption, and difficulty to self-care. If we don't help them, they might also be malnourished, and as they're aging, their immunity would degenerate and weaken. So today we're focusing on how spirulina can help with immunity. But before that, we need to understand what spirulina is. And let's take a look so that our newcomers can understand. Actually, we can say that spirulina is the ancestors for the majority of organisms on Earth. Why? Well, spirulina had been existing since 3.5 billion years ago, and that is when many plants and animals haven't even existed yet. It is also because of spirulina that the Earth has oxygen. Why? Because spirulina photosynthesizes. And photosynthesis is when plants use carbon dioxide to create oxygen. And in these circumstances, it is actually making their own food. So plants can grow by themselves. And as long as if they have sunlight, water, and air, they will be able to photosynthesize. And that is why it sort of created other organisms, and it is the most ancient organism on Earth. Though it is a plant, it is very different from other seaweed and green veggies, as it is 1,000 times higher in concentrated nutrients. How is it higher? Let us have a look. If we use ELKEN spirulina to proportion, every 30 tablets or 3 spoonfuls of ELKEN spirulina provides nutrients that is equivalent to beta carotene found in 500 apples, vitamin B3 found in 420 grapes, vitamin B1 found in 31 bowls of rice, iron found in 23 lemons, vitamin E found in 20 bell peppers, vitamin B2 found in 18 eggs, and vitamin B12 found in 80 sashimi. And what we want to convey is that ELKEN spirulina contains many concentrated nutrients as they are dried. Like the spirulina tablets and powder are already dehydrated. Any foods that has been dehydrated have nutrients that are more concentrated. So spirulina is a unique organism. It contains 60 types of nutrients, 20 types of minerals, and 18 types of plant protein, and 18 types of vitamins, and some good fats. Therefore, it differs from other plants. Other plants contain less protein, except for nuts and beans. But green veggies, as long as they are green, they don't contain as much protein. But the protein content in spirulina is very high. Then comes the second question. Besides providing balanced nutrition, last week we learned that spirulina is rich in nutrients and can provide a more balanced nutrition. Last week, but how does it help with our immunity? Besides providing nutrients to our cells, it also has some things that we don't know. So today I'll be sharing some recent studies on spirulina with everyone. But before we get to the studies, let us first understand the structure of spirulina. Does everyone know what spirulina? Does everyone know that spirulina also has another name called cyanobacteria? Bacteria means that it's a type of fungus. Yes, actually, spirulina is a type of fungus. That is why spirulina is also known as cyanobacteria. If you look at its structure, you'll see that there's a cell wall on the outer layer. And there's also a layer of cell membrane. It is unique in ways that its structure has a cell membrane, and on top of it, it is the cell wall. Its cell wall has two things known as LPS and PPG. Okay, I won't explain further as it is too deep. You just need to know that they have the LPS and PPG structure. We call any bacteria with this structure as gram-negative bacteria. And we determine by looking at what its cell membrane and cell wall have. And with that, we determine if it's positive or negative. So this is a way to categorize cells. It's different from how we diagnose whether we are negative or positive for an illness. And this is to determine the cell's type. Therefore, spirulina is considered as a gram-negative bacterium. And spirulina's cell wall has these two substances, LPS and PPG. Yes, so they have these two substances, LPS and PPG. And our body has a lot of what I mentioned earlier, which are immune cells. Some immune cells are able to recognize the LPS and PPG, and so they can integrate. Spirulina has LPS and PPG, and when it meets our immune cells, which is the macrophage and NK cell as mentioned earlier, it can integrate with these cells. Okay, so what happens when they integrate? Let us have a look. This picture on the left that moves shows that the plasma membrane of our macrophage, which is the outer layer, they have this purplish thingy. And it's like when we want to go through toll. When our car needs to go through the toll, we need a beep, and then only then we can pass through. So this purplish thingy is like our toll, and they do not accept just anything. It can only accept certain things. Coincidentally, the outer layer of the macrophage do accept LPS and PPG. So when they integrate, they will be able to promote immune cells activity and activate the cells. This is how, like, when you go through the toll, just a beep and the gate opens up for you. And with that, it allows immune cells to function and to create response that can defend bacteria and to activate its ability. And because immune cells' main function is to provide immune response, they need immune response to defend the bacteria. The immune responses are kind of complicated, so I won't go further into it. But I just want to let you know that spirulina has LPS and PPG on the outer layer. And therefore, when we consume it, it encounters innate immune cells in our body, and they can integrate with these cells to activate immune cells activity. That is why we say that spirulina has the potential to activate our innate immunity. And it has a way to naturally boost immunity. They imitate certain cells, but they aren't harmful as they are good bacteria. And after it integrates with our immune cells, besides increasing macrophage and NK cells activity, they can also increase our body's immunomodulator. immunomodulator are like cytokines. Okay, they're like cytokines. And after these immune cells accept it, they will secrete cytokines that is for the functions of our immune response. Lastly, studies also found that after consuming spirulina, it can increase our antibody expression of our blood serum. And does anyone remember what antibodies we have? We have some immunoglobulin like IgG, IgA, and IgE. Findings states that these antibodies in our blood had increased. So all these changes prove that our immune system had strengthened and it has a lot of responses. But the thing is that the things that are activated aren't harmful. So you wouldn't have like a cold or a fever, but it can train our immune cells through spirulina's unique structure. It's like they meet an enemy, but the enemy is like a nice one. So they can train our cells to work. And it's what we know as 1,000 days the country nurtures its soldiers and all for one day's battle. And to train the soldiers in our body. Okay, I also want to share with everyone, actually these studies used ELKEN Spirulina to conduct these studies and not other brands, but our ELKEN Spirulina instead. And these studies used white mice for experiments. So for 6 weeks, they gave these tiny rodents to consume spirulina and observe their immune response. Earlier, we mentioned that it can activate immune cells activity, and it increases the activity up to 29% to 57%. And why are there two? Well, the blue one is placebo, and we didn't give them any spirulina. The 29% to 57% differs in the amount they consume. For the 29%, if we convert it into humans' weight, it is around 20 tablets of spirulina for every 60 kg. And 57% is for 40 tablets of spirulina for every 60 kg. As you can see, it's slightly different, but just 20 tablets can give you a noticeable difference on how it can activate immune cells response. As for the bottom one, it increased the activation of NK cells. The one above is macrophage, and the bottom one is NK cells. With that, it also increased up to 57% to 114%. Another thing I want to break down for everyone is, look at the picture on the right. You can see the IgG, IgM, IgA, and IgE, right? These are the antibodies mentioned earlier, our immunoglobulins. After consuming spirulina, our IgG, IgM, and IgA had all increased, 19%, 21%, and 21% respectively. But if you look at IgE, it did not increase, and instead it reduced by a little. Why? Is it a good thing? Yes, it's a good thing. This IgE antibody and immunoglobulin would increase when you have allergies. And it is in charge of the sources that leads you to these allergies. Therefore, this is why after consuming spirulina, the immunoglobulins that are in charge of fighting viruses and pathogens have increased, but IgE did not. This indicates that after consuming spirulina, it activates antibodies, but it wouldn't bring about any allergies. Hence, IgE was not affected. And this also means that spirulina is not just blindly increasing immune response as a whole. It also has balancing and regulating functions. It increases the ones that need to be increased and would not increase the ones that should not be increased. And so it's great how they came to have these effects. And these are some recent studies on ELKEN spirulina. So we now know that ELKEN Spirulina has a really unique structure that can sort of imitate cells and train our immune cells. Besides that, some components that it has also helps with our immune system. The first one is protein. Why? All of the cells in our body is made of protein, and hence protein is needed to produce antibodies and for the growth and repairment of cells. So though spirulina is rich in protein, not all of spirulina products are the same. For instance, studies found that ELKEN Spirulina contains higher protein than other spirulina brands. And that are perhaps less pure. So ELKEN Spirulina has up to 59% of protein, but other brands might only have up to 37%. This may be because they aren't as pure and might have added some other substances into it, some additives. So for the same amount, ELKEN Spirulina contains much more higher protein content. The second one is phycocyanin. Phycocyanin is one of the active components and it has its own functions. Many studies on spirulina found that spirulina has the function to increase immunity due to its antibacterial, antivirus, antifungal, and antiparasitic ability. Experts believe that it's due to the phycocyanin that brings about these effects in benefiting our immune system. Similarly, when we break it down, ELKEN Spirulina's phycocyanin content is also far more higher than other spirulina brands, around twice as high. Every 100 grams of ELKEN Spirulina contains 4,000 milligrams, but normal ones only has 2,200 milligrams, so it's about twice as much. What we want to say is that yes, they're all spirulina, but due to their production processes, quality would be different. Therefore, when you're choosing spirulina, do pay attention to its quality and ensure that its production and manufacturing processes can give us the best and purest product quality. Well, okay, it seems like spirulina has all sorts of nutrients. If I consume multivitamins, they too contain all sorts of nutrients, and the content might even be higher. They have however much you want, and there's a lot in the market too. So there are the ones with only vitamins, or maybe you want both vitamins and minerals. They have it all. But the question is that these multivitamins are synthetic. They aren't directly extracted from natural foods. It is actually impossible to do so, so it has to be synthetic. And their differences is that multivitamins has many different nutrients, but they are synthetic. And as compared to natural foods such as spirulina, those are totally natural. Natural foods carry certain functional complexes that synthetic vitamins do not have. For instance, the functional complexes that spirulina has are phycocyanin and various antioxidants. These functional complexes have their own functions. For instance, antioxidants are anti-inflammatory and can increase our immunity. So they have these additional functional complexes, which multivitamins would never have as they are not natural and they don't have these natural complexes in there. After knowing more about it, actually spirulina is a food, it's not a vitamin supplement. It is a natural nutrient and it has its own nutrients and functional complexes, which studies found to be also beneficial to our immune cells. And as for synthetic vitamins, there's a reason why they synthesize them. The dosage in there might be very high, so it is only recommended for certain situations. It has a high dosage because they want you to absorb more, so they give you a high dosage, but that doesn't mean you will be able to absorb it all. Spirulina is a food, so you don't need to worry whether it has excessive dosage and bring about side effects. It does not come with any side effects. It is a natural food, and hence this is the difference between synthetic vitamins and spirulina. So don't get them confused. Lastly, let's have a look at why ELKEN spirulina is extraordinary. Like, why would its protein and functional complexes be different, and why are the effects they bring about different? Let us have a look. The same principle as I mentioned earlier. Yes, they are the same product, but due to different production and manufacturing processes, different brands would have different components and achieve effects that varies. ELKEN spirulina values its whole planting and production processes. They're very particular about it. Its whole process had been certified as organic and has also been awarded by numerous international and local accolades. These ensures that its planting process is free from pollution, that its production method preserve ELKEN spirulina's nutrients as pure and as best as possible. For instance, ELKEN spirulina tablets do not contain any additives, and hence it is very pure. They don't need any additives to have it form into a solid tablet. They're purely compressed from spirulina powder, and hence why its quality is different, which allows it to be the #1 spirulina brand in Malaysia for 10 consecutive years. Of course, it has been endorsed by scientists from Japan, our father of ELKEN spirulina. After he researched and developed it, his son, Dr. Yasumasa, also took over and continued the research on spirulina. Actually, the spirulina studies I mentioned earlier were also the studies that Dr. Yasumasa has shared with us in the past. And what makes ELKEN spirulina different is that they have its own clinical studies, and not all spirulina brands have them. So with different quality, the effects would also be different. All right, that is it for my sharing today. If you think today's talk might be a little too technical for you, we will upload this video on our YouTube channel, ELKEN Story. In the past, I've shared about other aspects of ELKEN spirulina, so you can also find them there. So see you guys next time, and thank you. Bye-bye.